What is going on, everybody, and welcome on inside the Browns beat here as we're back after a little hiatus. We missed last week, couple weeks off during the holidays. We want to say we hope you all had a great holiday, a good Christmas, a good New Year's, whatever holidays you celebrate. We hope they were fantastic. Hope you got a little rest. I know I did not. I got the opposite of that. I got no rest, but had a great holiday. And we are back at it now. The Browns season officially over. The Browns end with 2 wins. And Fred, we didn't get to talk about a lot of wins, but we get to talk about some wins. And then we got to talk about a lot of offseason news, big, huge news going on this offseason before we get to the back half of the show where we've got part of the radio crew for the Cleveland Browns. He is the radio analyst and kind of the Mr. Do-Everything on the broadcasting world side of things for the Cleveland Browns, Nathan Zagura. Fred had a great conversation with Nathan earlier today, and we're going to send it to that here in just a little bit. But we're glad you're here. We're glad you're joining us, and we're glad you're back inside the Browns beat again. I am Michael Keefe. He is Fred Greetham. This QR code at the top of the screen allows you to subscribe to the OBR, takes you right to the subscription page. The Orange and Brown Report is the oldest, largest independent Cleveland Browns coverage site in all of Cleveland. So make sure you click on that, or don't click on that, scan it. Go to the site, hit subscribe, and become a part of the best Cleveland Browns community, culture, and website that there is in all of Cleveland. That's the OBR. Fred, very good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's been a while, and think about it. They won 5 games this year. I think at least 3 of them I didn't come on.
Right.
Back in the Packers game, I was out of town. And then we had the holidays. So, yeah, 3 out of 5. Maybe we should, rethink that schedule. But no, it was, as it turns out, kind of meaningless wins. I mean, if you can ever win 2 in a row over the Steelers and the Bengals, and then it didn't really matter when it came down to the coaching decision, I think that was already made. And all it ended up doing, for those of you that are draft nicks, knocked the Browns out of potential top 2 pick to number 6. So it was good for the moment. We'll see in the big picture. Kevin Stefanski is out and now looking for a new leader. So happy New Year to everybody. And it's something we've been accustomed to with the Browns, for most of the time since they've come back in 99. I mean, I think under Haslam, this might be the 6th or 7th head coach, or maybe since 99, but it's just kind of a perpetual. And now a whole new dynamic comes in when John Harbaugh gets thrown into the free agency of coaches. Here's a guy, 18 years, 12 playoffs, won the Super Bowl. And I looked at his record. I think he had 3 non-winning seasons, and one of them was this year at 8-9. And they'd almost put a parade in Cleveland on an 8-9 record.
Well,
but it comes down to the guy missed a field goal. If he makes a field goal, a rookie kind of pulled a opening, season like Andre Schmidt, missed the field goal and they lost the game. They stuck with him. He had a great season. Won the winning, game-winning kick against the Bengals. But Tyler Luke misses the field goal, not a very long one. And the domino effect is John Harbaugh, part of the reason, because he'd at least be the coach. They'd be in the playoffs this week, and I don't think you would have fired him with a playoff game.
They'd still be employed this week. Well, let's start with all this, Fred, and first let's give some shout outs. Be like our friends here that are either in the comments or watching live, like Chef Brian K. that says, "Hey, Fred, Michael, Happy New Year, gentlemen. Happy New Year's right back to you, Chef Brian K. Excited to be back with you." Or be like our other buddies over there on Twitch. How about Ty Sox 49 months in a row? That is 4 years and a month in a row.
Right.
For Ty Sox being subscribed. Shout out to you, Ty Sox. But E. Gillen had to one-up him. 53 months in a row. That's 4 years and even more months tacked onto it in a row free Gil and subscribed over on Twitch. Shout out to you two. Just an amazing community that we have here, and we love that you join us week in and week out, even after the season has ended. So, Fred, let's start. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to call you AutoWorks Motorsports. We're not even going to call you your name. You're just AutoWorks Motorsports. Greeting, gentlemen, and Michael. All right. Very fun. Fred, we'll get into some other stuff, but I mean, the main thing going on right now, obviously, the Cleveland Browns fire Kevin Stefanski. They retain Andrew Berry. I think there's so many different ways. I don't want to make this a convoluted conversation where we talk about everything all at once. So let's segment this thing really quickly. After this season, they go 3-14 last year, 5-12 this year, and it was enough for Jimmy Haslam to say, all right, Kevin Stefanski's out as the head coach, 2-time coach of the year with the Browns, made the playoffs twice with the Browns, a losing overall record with the Browns, but Kevin Stefanski is fired from his position as head coach of the Browns. And, you know, again, without going into all the other stuff, Fred, just your initial thoughts. When did you sense this coming? Did you feel like Kevin, because I feel like there was this, we didn't know. This wasn't one of those. I feel like there were several coaches that have been fired over these years where you knew it was going to be their last game. I think a lot of people thought it could be Kevin's last game, but a lot of people not sure. We weren't 100% sure where Jimmy was going to go. So when did you kind of have a feeling that this was going to be Kevin's last game against the Bengals?
Well, I think the last week at least, maybe midway after, a couple days after the Steelers win, when you weren't really getting anything, it usually leaks out to the media, to the people they want, saying, the Browns are kind of leaning to keeping things the same. They did that with Andrew Berry. They all leaked that out, that it looks like Andrew Berry's safe. And so that came from, whether it's the owner or somebody really close to the owner that knew what was going on. But I think the whole week leading up to the Bengals, just the way Kevin if any of you have watched press conferences, I've been there for 6 years. He has not really effusively praised any individual, and he went out of his way to tell stories about David Njoku and how they started Rocky, and Njoku didn't like him, and he talked a lot about Schlesinger and stumped for him to be an all-pro, not just rookie of the year. And he talked about a lot of individuals, and he just never likes to talk about individuals. If he was asked to give a comment about Michael Keith, he'd go, well, I really like Michael Keith, but we got a really good broadcasting room. It's always the group, and it's a team and all that. But he kind of talked a little more about individuals. And then when you were getting nothing from the word saying, even if it would have said, even a good showing against the Bengals would keep the job, nothing like that. It was pretty much, that decision was made, in my opinion, before the Steelers game, because it didn't matter that they had back-to-back wins for the first time in over 2 years. And, the way they played very hard against the Bills, the Steelers, and the Bengals with an undermanned roster. I mean, I'm looking at, you're kidding me. Look who you don't have: Njoku, Fannin, Judkins. I mean, what kind of an offense in the offensive line? 4 of the 5 starters to start the year were out. So, yeah, I got a pretty good feeling that this is going to be the end. I just didn't know how they were going to do it. I mean, I like Kevin a lot, but I felt like, okay, if you feel like Shedeur Sanders has shown enough under the development of Sanders, of Stefanski and Reese and Musgrave, wouldn't you want to kind of carry that in the offseason? But they felt like evidently either that wasn't good enough, but it boiled down to just wins. I just You can say whether it's fair or not, but it sure seemed to me that those two guys were kind of paired at the hip from the beginning, 6 years. Either they both go or they both stay. And they split it up. And I think really Jimmy Haslam did not want to go on a search by himself, because a lot of people forget, whether you liked him or not, Paul DePodesta was kind of the whisperer talking to Haslam and guiding decisions. He brought Stefanski and Barry together, and that's when he left a couple months ago to go to the Rockies. You didn't know if that was a forerunner of things to come, or it had just happened to be one to go to baseball at that time. But Haslam has, and I think he chose Barry to be the guy that he can lean on to be the quarterback search or coaching search and all those things, because it just seems like, I don't know how you can say one deserved it when they're both 8-26. If it was all about wins, Barry said in his final thing, well, we just didn't see enough progress. Well, you said you got 14 rookies out there, it's going to be a struggle. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's what the owners felt was, okay, I got a guy who had a good draft. He's growing, and he's probably only going to get better, but he didn't feel the same way necessarily with Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, it certainly felt, and well, before I get into my point, I got to give a shout out over on Twitch. How about Pat Shea? I'm just going to start flashing these up there. Pat Shea's giving out subs over there on Twitch. I think he gave 10 of them, if I'm not mistaken. 10 subs given out by Pat Shea, our buddy Pat Shea from CA, or as I like to call him, Pat Sheaka. He even gave one to Fumble. That's so nice of you. Even gave one to Fumble. So big shout out to Pat Shea over there for gifting the subs. Appreciate you. I think I was so on the fence with this, Fred, because it is the NFL, and whether you think it's fair or not, it's just very hard to be sitting there going 3-14, 5-12, 4 and what, you know what I mean? It's hard to do that and keep your job. And there's a lot of very valid excuses that we can make for Kevin Stefanski. I can make a lot of excuses for the lack of talent that was out there. Mm-hmm. And what coach was going to win with the talent that was on offense for the Cleveland Browns this year? None of them. Andy Reid wouldn't have won games, and you could have brought Bill Belichick back. They wouldn't have won games. Nobody was going to win. Everybody acted like if they would have just done this last year and brought Mike Vrabel in, they would have won. No, Mike Vrabel wasn't winning games with the offense that the Cleveland Browns was putting out there. It wasn't going to happen. Having said that, what kind of threw me over the edge, and I really started to notice it, kind of throughout the course of the year, but it became so apparent in the game against the Bears this year, Fred, was that you've got this guy over here at the offensive or the defensive coordinator position, Jim Schwartz, that is putting together defenses that are working week in and week out, year in and year out. And it's happening. And there's a lot more talent over there, but he's also coaching to that talent. He's getting creative when he needs to. There's a lot of it. And I noticed it really in that Bears game. It felt like Kevin kind of had his tail. And I know Tommy Rees was the offensive coordinator, but Kevin's supposed to be the offensive guru, right? He's supposed to be the guy that knows how to coach an offense. And it really felt like they were coaching with their tails tucked between their legs. It felt like they were saying, well, we don't have a lot of talent out here, so we can't do a lot of stuff. And so the offense was more vanilla than you could even imagine an offense to be. I think there was just an extreme lack of creativity offensively from the play calling perspective and just from the execution and what they were asking. It felt like instead of trying to get the most out of the players that were there, Fred, it felt like they were almost using the lack of talent as a crutch to say, well, we can't do any of this stuff. And I'm watching these other teams coach, and they're trying to get creative, and they're trying to run plays to move the ball and maybe a little bit less traditional. He just never seemed to be able to do it. And And I think that was a trend this last 2 years. And I really ultimately think I think if there was some level of creativity shown offensively with the Cleveland Browns, Kevin had a better chance to keep his job. But I think because there wasn't Fred, I mean, I think that really put the writing on the wall for him.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, a different voice sometimes does make a difference. I think back of Hugh Jackson. I mean, in the midst of his thing, they brought him back after that 131. They were 1-7 and they fired him. And on Monday, Greg Williams took over the exact same roster and they went 5-3. Just a different mindset. And it was night and day at practice. We're allowed to watch practices. And under Jackson, the music was blaring, and I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but it was just like loud, crazy music. And on Monday, it was silent, and it was all business. It was a different mentality, and they won. I don't know how you can say that coaching didn't make a difference. Now they didn't want to bring Williams back because maybe he was too tough, but that's kind of what all along why I feel like a new voice. And I know that a lot of people aren't for this, but I just think Jim Schwartz makes the most sense because I view him as a very similar old school, more like a Greg Williams from the aspect of no nonsense. I don't know if it's going to be no music, no blaring party time, but whether that matters or not. But I do think it'll be a completely different mindset. I think there'll be more discipline and you have continuity. You got a defensive side of the ball ready to win and win championships. You could go, look how the AFC North finished. You could look at this record, and I easily can find 4 or 5 games they should have won. The defense played well enough.
Oh, yeah.
And you might have won the division despite everything with all the rookies, because the Division One, I guess it won with 10-7, but I mean, it was there for the taking this year. And I think what sealed the fate beside the Bears game, you lost to the New York Jets, who at the time were the worst team in the NFL, who were trying to lose.
And they just sold their defense. They just sold off their players.
And you lost to the Tennessee Titans, who at the time they played them were the worst team in the NFL. Yep. So, I mean, right there are 2 gimme wins. And yeah, they played hard at the end of the season, but I just feel like it was too little too late. And so, yeah, that's what we were talking about week after week. You're the offensive genius. That's what you're here for. Don't just say we got to do better. Do something different.
Do better.
Fix it. And whether it's running the whole game out of the Wildcat or something, remember Eric Mangini did that and beat the Steelers one game with Josh Cribbs. Just every night, just every play had him run. It was like, well, that's not long lasting, but it won him a game. So, yeah, I can see why they did it. It is, but you better have something set up. And I'm not the guy that wants to go out and search all over and find up and coming offensive coordinator dude. It's like, I know that's what you did with Stefanski, but you went 6 years with it, and now you're starting over again. And if you start over with the defense, there's no guarantee that a new voice is going to be able to make these same players play the same level. And there's no guarantee that if with Stefanski going, he gets another job that Schwartz might not go with him, or he might go with him. Unless he gets the head coaching job, I don't know if I'd want to stay here if I get passed over when he was there to be the next head coach.
Yeah. There's a lot tied into that, and let's dive into a couple of these before in about 10 minutes we'll get to the interview that you did earlier today with Nathan Zagura. But right now we know the Browns are going to interview. I think there's 5 that we know about right now. I don't know if that's changed since this afternoon, but I think there's 5 that we know about. So, Fred, just give me your thoughts. You already kind of did with the first one. But the first guys they're going to talk to are going to be tomorrow. They're going to talk to Jim Schwartz and they're going to talk to Tommy Rees. So they're going to talk to their in-house options. Your thoughts there?
Well, I can see, yeah, obviously Tommy Rees is, considered an up-and-coming coach. You really can't gauge too much what he did for, half a season calling plays, but he's well thought of. I could see that pairing. Going back to what I said with Schwartz, if he's the head coach, I could see him being the offensive coordinator if he decides he'd stay. I do not think he's ready to be a head coach in the NFL. With that said, in this scenario, with Schwartz already here. So I like both of them, but in a certain scenario, I don't see him being the Reese as the head coach. Monken was here before. Don't remember a whole lot about him. Kind of nondescript in interviews and stuff. I'm not really worried about that, but he does have a pretty good track record. It's quite interesting if that was really the sticking point with Harbaugh, and why he was let go, that would be interesting play if Harbaugh, the Browns were able to get him and Monken came as offensive coordinator. But I don't know without an established quarterback or really what they think of Shedeur Sanders. So I don't know much about. I think he's from Seattle. Is he a defensive coordinator?
So yeah, I was going to kind of walk us through one by one, but You brought up Todd Monken. Obviously, that news broke that the Browns were going to interview Todd Monken early yesterday, and I'm going to say this about all these guys. I think people have huge opinions on things that whatever they do, you're going to have to let play out. So, for example, a lot of people have big opinions on Jim Schwartz because he was a terrible head coach for the Detroit Lions.
Mm-hmm.
He's an excellent defensive coordinator. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bad head coach again. Situations are different.
I thought Bill Belichick was terrible when he was here. I thought he'd never get another job. And he's like, he wrote me a handwritten letter, and I believe I threw it away. I never knew that he was going to be a 6-time Super Bowl champion.
Right. Guys learn, and maybe Jim Schwartz has learned something. It's the same thing with Tommy Rees. Listen, I have to tell you that in my brain, that's the name I keep coming back to. Not because necessarily it's my number one guy that I want, but they made it very clear in the building that they value him tremendously. And I think a lot of people think Tommy Rees leaves Cleveland and goes and takes a big job somewhere, whether it's in a college or whatever. And I don't know that they want to lose him. And I think that maybe gives him a leg up. Whether people love that or not, we have to see it play out. So then you go to Todd Monken and everybody goes, oh, but the Browns offense in 2019 and Freddie Kitchens. Yeah, it was Baker Mayfield couldn't stop rolling right out of the pocket. They were just in a weird spot that year. Freddie Kitchens was not ready for that. And yeah, Todd Monken, 1 year here, like you said, kind of nondescript. But I don't think you can then say, well, he then went and spent the next, 6 seasons in Baltimore. And do you think he didn't learn something? Like maybe he learned something. Again, I don't know that a 65-year-old guy right now is my number one guy to lead this team either, because this is not established. The Browns are not an established team. But like you said, you don't have a lot of big memories of Todd Monken because he was just kind of that nondescript guy. Feels to me like it'd be like watching replays of Kevin Stefanski talking, listening to Todd Monken talk, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other two guys there is a little bit of a mix. You've got the Jim Schwartz and the Monken and that. And then you've got the two guys that are, I think a lot of people think future head coaches, but the Browns, I think, are talking to them way before anybody thought somebody would. And that would be Dan Pitcher out of Cincinnati and Aiden Durday, the defensive coordinator out there in Seattle. People are raving about Aiden Durday and what he does. Again, he's a guy that has worked both in the front office and on the coaching ranks. So he brings this kind of wide range of knowledge of how he does things. And obviously that Seattle defense has been unbelievable all season. Obviously you bring in a defensive head coach though, Fred. If your philosophy is you want to keep Jim Schwartz around and you're not going to make him the head coach, I don't think you can bring in a defensive coordinator.
No, I mean, I agree, and I'm just saying you got a defense. You can make the playoffs with your defense if you'd have an average offense. You score 20 points, you won easily 3, 4, 5 more games. It was just, again, back-to-back horrible offensive years is a big reason. That's why the case, I feel like, unless you are starting over, there's just no guarantee that chemistry would stay the same with a completely new coordinator. You could, unless you stay in-house and then you're staying in-house head coach and moving the linebacker coach to defensive, I'm not necessarily saying that. I don't know, but It just is, and you're kind of forcing your new coach on having somebody here. This is the defensive coordinator you want. And you got to think the defense has a chance to even be better because Martin Emerson, him coming back could be like adding a first or second round veteran. And if JOK came back, it's the same thing. So I think Emerson's well on his way to being back. I don't know about the other one, but the defense can really keep you and win you games. You can put all your focus on the offense this year.
Yes.
But I just don't know how you keep a guy who has said he'd like to be a head coach if you say, yeah, we just don't want you to be the head coach here.
Yeah. Listen, I'm sure other names are going to pop up. Again, it starts tomorrow when they talk to Reese and Schwartz. Again, they've got 3 other names on the list. We'll see. Obviously, I believe it was Schefter that reported that when Harbaugh got fired, all other 7 teams that are going to be looking for head coaches this offseason all called him immediately and tried to schedule interviews. So it has not been, to my knowledge, Fred, it hasn't been reported that Harbaugh is going to meet with the Browns. I know that's a name.
It hasn't been reported that he's agreed to meet with anybody as of yet, but I have read reports that his agent has fielded calls from up to 9 or 10 teams now, so there's 3 or 4 teams with a sitting head coach that are looking to upgrade the position.
Could you imagine being one of those coaches that you thought you were safe right there at the end? They didn't fire you. You thought they were bringing you back. And then all of a sudden, John Harbaugh gets fired and you're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Just give me your thoughts on John Harbaugh, though, because I think the Cleveland Twitter sphere exploded when he got hired. There were a lot of jokes, a lot of wife swap jokes about Kevin Stefanski going to coach the Baltimore Ravens and John Harbaugh going to coach the Browns. But I also saw a lot of people saying that they really didn't want anything to do with John Harbaugh. So your thought, like, let's say word comes out that John Harbaugh is going to take some interviews and one of them is going to be with the Browns. What are your thoughts on potentially adding a guy like John Harbaugh?
Well, other than what my feelings about the Schwartz thing, I mean, how can you argue with a guy 18 years, 12 playoffs, Super Bowl win, 3 losing years, and 2 of the 3 were 8 and 9, I don't know if it's realistic. He's got roots growing up in the Cleveland area or Ohio and his parents, and they talked about the Browns, the Indians growing up and all that. I don't know about the challenge you're going from Lamar Jackson to Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson. I mean, as far as I know, the Ravens reportedly were going to draft Sanders, but they were looking maybe in the 5th round. So, but I won't say the Browns don't have a shot, because all you have to do, as bad as it was with the Deshaun Watson, the Browns didn't have a shot to get him. He eliminated them, and the next thing you know, I'm seeing Browns acquired Deshaun Watson.
Do we have to keep
The
talking
owner
about this?
opened up the Brinks truck, but the dynamics would have to be different. I don't see him being told what he has to do, and I do think to some degree Kevin Stefanski was just agreeable to about anything brought to him.
Right.
I never know to him to pound the table for something or whatever. So yeah, I think it's kind of a long shot, but I wouldn't rule the Browns out. Just depends on. I got the feeling all along they kind of wink, have Schwartz and maybe even Reese. Like if we make a move, even though they said, you got to go through all the interview processes and all that. You can't just say, hey, I want Mike. You have to go through all this hiring, minority rule, Rooney rule, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know beyond that, but it is keep us talking for sure.
It sure does. It sure does. All right, let's take just a moment here to remind you that you are catching Inside the Browns Beat right here on the OBR streaming network. I'll put the QR code back up. Go on over there. Get subscribed to theobr.com. And wherever you're watching us tonight, whether it's over on the socials, make sure you hit follow, or whether it's on YouTube, Twitch, hit follow, hit subscribe, hit like, and make sure you are tuned into everything OBR, as we're going to carry you all the way through the offseason. Again, we're here at coach time. Then we're going to get through the playoffs. We're going to get through the Super Bowl. Then it's going to be time to talk about what players the Browns can bring in. We're going to start talking about the draft. It is your normal Cleveland Browns offseason, and we're going to carry you through the whole thing. So hit that QR code and make sure you are subscribed. All right, Fred, a little bit earlier today, I couldn't make it, but Fred, you smashed it. And you found the time to connect with just one of our good buddies, a guy that I've had on Garage Beers, which, by the way, come hang out on Garage Beers 9:00 tonight. We got Spencer German coming on to talk more Browns. Plus, we'll talk college football playoffs and Cavs and Blue Jackets and all that. So Garage Beers 9:00, don't miss it. But you had him a little bit earlier today, the radio analyst and kind of Mr. Do Everything from a broadcasting side for the Cleveland Browns, host of Cleveland Browns Daily. You talked to him. We're going to throw it over to that interview right now. It is Nathan Zagura. We hope you enjoy this interview. Yeah. We'll see you right after.
All right, let's get going best we can. Okay. We like to have you talk a little bit about your journey, how you ended up with the Browns. I worked for the Browns twice in my career. And maybe bring everybody, they know you, but they haven't maybe heard your story.
Yeah, so I had 13 seasons with the Browns. 2013 was the first year that I was with the team, and then 2014 was my first year on the sidelines, and did that for 9 seasons. And now I can't believe that it's true, but I've now done 4 seasons in the booth, obviously starting with Jim, and then now with Andrew there. It was a kind of a weird journey. I did a lot of fantasy football for CBS and Sirius nationally, and wanted to be a part of a team. And I remember there was a Thursday night game against Buffalo, and I want to say it was either 2012 or 2013 when I was maybe just doing the radio at the Browns. But I think it was 2012, and I was, got to be on the sideline. Maybe it was 2013, and got to be a part of it. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to go full time with the Browns. And then I did that in 2014. So it might have been Thursday night in 2013. And yeah, that's kind of how it's been, and been here ever since, and certainly love it. And am as eager as I think anybody who would be watching this for, this organization to have the kind of winning that our great fans deserve, and to have, those memories and experiences like we got to have, for a brief moment in a very strange COVID year in 2020. And then obviously the end of 2023 and beating the Jets on that Thursday night, just the vibe in the city and in the stadium. One of my favorite nights ever to get to have Jim, on the call with that one with me. So hoping we can get to those kind of days again, and even more, right? Get to AFC championships, win Super Bowls.
Yeah, absolutely. started with Art Modell back with Browns News Illustrated, and
Wow.
then when the Browns returned in 99, I was the clevelandbrowns.com writer for the first 3 years. And of course I did the stats for Jimmy and before him, Nev and Casey Coleman. So it'd be a good idea, or it'd be fun, if we can get back to winning football and so forth.
Yeah.
And I know I just want to ask, there's been a few things happens in the last day or two. What's the mood in the building? I mean, you're very close to the heartbeat of the Cleveland Browns, being the host of Cleveland Browns Daily and the voice of the Browns, and just kind of bring us up to speed on your take on when you heard the news.
Yeah, it's sad because, I've gotten to know Kevin Stefanski. I've interviewed him countless times, spent a lot of time with him in the building, outside of the building. And so you're sad to see somebody that you like so much go. At the same time, when there's a coaching change brings hope, right? And for the Browns, unfortunately, we've only won, 8 games the last 2 years. And now you're hoping that there's going to be somebody who's going to come in with a little bit of magic, a little bit of secret sauce to kind of jumpstart this thing. And so I think that's kind of the feeling in the building right now. I mean, there's a lot of shock. I can tell you that, John Harbaugh was released. I think everywhere you go, people are talking about the fact that John Harbaugh was let go by the Baltimore Ravens. And now the focus is on, finding that coach and finding, the quarterback of this football team. And maybe it's somebody that's here already, like Shador. We saw some nice glimpses from him down the stretch. Or maybe it's somebody who's not here. But those are the critical things kind of facing this organization. Everybody knows this is a critical time. The next kind of these big decisions that are made are going to be massive decisions and really impact, the future of this franchise.
Like you're talking a lot more of the guys than I am, but on Monday when they cleared out, I talked to, a lot of the players, and they expressed, with Kevin before the decision was made, but after the decision was made, a lot were very pro Jim Schwartz. I mean, what's your take or feeling? Obviously, personally, I mean, what you think, not anything necessarily but it just makes sense on the surface to me to kind of not blow up a defense that has a chance to carry you.
Yeah, I think, and I, just from hearing Jimmy talk and even Andrew Barry talk, that I think, Jim Schwartz is very much in the plans, whether he is the head coach or, whether he would be the defensive coordinator. He's the great football coach. They want him in this building. I know he's getting an interview on Thursday. Yeah, he's done it before. He's been successful before. He kind of changed the standard of what was acceptable. And then, as he said, and I thought that was really smart of him, he changed the standard of what was unacceptable in Detroit. The record he got fired for was a record that prior to him would have been one that somebody would have been carried down the streets for. So great leader. The players love him. They love playing for him. He allows them to express themselves. He knows he's an excellent motivator, both through, constructive criticism and then also like a lot of praise. He'll wear the jerseys of guys that have been playing well, out to practice, especially younger guys, to give them a little bit of juice. So yeah, very intrigued by that. And I think that everybody's goal right now is that, Jim Schwartz is a part of what we're doing going forward. You have a Super Bowl caliber defense. He's the architect of it. We've got a lot of guys that fit that scheme here in our building. And so it just makes a lot of sense for him. And then I think even beyond that, on that defensive staff, you have incredible position coaches. Jacques Césaire has been great with the defensive line. Jason Tarver is, I think, probably the best linebacker coach in the National Football League. You look at the way that everybody he's coached has gotten better and the level that they've ascended to. You've got on the back end our guy Brandon Lynch with the corners, who's phenomenal. He'll be a defensive coordinator someday. And then Coach Bonda with the safeties was a defensive coordinator in college. He's likely to be a defensive coordinator someday. So it's an incredible staff on that side. And I think it makes a lot of sense that you want them to be a part of whatever you're doing. And whether that means Jim Schwartz goes up to the main chair and you elevate one of those guys, Tarver or B. Lynch, to the defensive coordinator role, great. If it means that, they just kind of keep rolling with what they're rolling on the defensive side, it's certainly, it's one of those things. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And certainly it's not broken on that side of the ball.
Well, I feel it's the quickest path to the playoffs. Is if I look at, I think you got 10 out of 11 defensive guys under contract.
Yep.
And I don't know the status of JOK, but Emerson, if you can get one or both of them back, that's like adding 2 first-round or second-round picks with experience right into the lineup on that good defense.
No doubt.
And then you can put all your attention on the offense. And we know there's some pieces there. And so it just seems like not mess with it. You can't assume that a new coach, even if they're defensive minded, would be able to just keep doing the way it's been going with Schwartz. So I don't know what
Sure.
the John Harbaugh thing comes in. What's your take on that whole situation to see a guy like that get let go?
Insane, wild. I mean, 18 years, tons of success. If that field goal goes through the uprights, obviously he's their head coach today. I don't know maybe how it would go from before that, but he's their head coach today. There's no question. So that's a unique kind of a wild thing. And I think he's obviously the hottest candidate. I think that every team that's got an opening will kind of back up the truck and say, what do you want? And I think there are probably going to be some teams that currently do not have openings that are going to do the same. And he could end up going somewhere that currently does not have an opening. So that was, very surprising. And you think about the stability that we've been so envious of in terms of the Pittsburgh Steelers with their 3 coaches. And then, the Ravens have only had 3 coaches, much shorter time period, but Marcia Broda for 3 years, Billick for 9, and then John Harbaugh for 18 years. The guy averaged almost 10 wins a year for 18 years. So it's a shocker. And, sometimes things need to change and evolve, but I think he would have to be at the top of the list of every team because he's got the pedigree, he's got the experience, he's got the results behind it.
Yeah, and that's the pedigree and so forth. And sometimes you need another voice. And I don't know if that's, even part of the Stefanski move, but I keep coming back to Schwartz. I mean, obviously the Harbaugh effect is out there, but with Schwartz, I was a part of Bill Belichick, and I honestly can say I didn't think the guy was ever going to amount to much of a coach. You can see in fact, I don't even think I kept a handwritten letter he sent me. I can't find it because I never thought he was going to be a 6-time, Super Bowl champion.
Sure.
But with that said, so many times, even though it's been 12 years since Schwartz was the head coach, sometimes they do so much better the next time around, So
Yep.
I just, take that for what it's worth. We'll see what happens, there. As far as quarterback, we all know that's the magic. They've been looking for a quarterback since I covered Bernie Kosar. I mean, Baker, we know his thing, but that's really, you look at the teams that are still playing, that's it. I mean, what's your assessment right now with where they have the quarterback, and what do you see the options are going into next year after you win 2 games and you maybe went out of range for the top 1 or 2 guys in the draft?
Yeah, I think that it's probably unlikely that the quarterback would come from the draft. So from an option standpoint, I thought Shador had some excellent stretches of football, and it's clear he's very talented as a thrower of the football. There's, I think, a lot that, needs to continue with his development. And, I think that it is a completely viable path. If you said, and the next head coach was like on board, they were Shador, supporters, to say, okay, let's get him some weapons. Let's improve this offensive line. Let's give him every rep and let's just go with it and see what that looks like for the next year. I think that is completely a viable option for the Cleveland Browns. And because he did show improvement, he is a great natural thrower of the football. There's no question he can attack every blade of grass on the defense. I thought he improved in a lot of areas. Now, the first half against Cincinnati at the end was not great, but when the game was on the line, got you down the field and got you in a field goal range for Andre Schmidt. So that certainly is one path. I think another path in, Deshaun Watson will be under contract. I don't think he would be handed the reins per se, but just another option. I think really in-house, you're saying, do we give Shador, let's just back it up. And that comes, I think, a lot with the next head coach and what their evaluation of Shador is. Or you look outside of this building and, guys like, could a Malik Willis be a solution who's played very well in limited opportunities with the Green Bay Packers, and somebody that the Browns, I know, were considering drafting in the 3rd round of that 2022 draft had he not been taken by Tennessee? Does Daniel Jones come back from his injury? Is he somebody that's available? Is Mac Jones, who played very well for Kyle, went the kind of quarterback finishing school there with Kyle Shanahan, is he somebody that, you would consider making a trade for? Would the Niners even make him available? So I think that's kind of where you're looking more than anything with this quarterback. I think if it's in-house, Shador, say, let's go with it. Let's see what he can do. Dylan Gabriel, I think, has shown himself to be an excellent backup, which is a valuable thing on his salary as a 3rd rounder. Or you go outside and free agency. Malik Willis is probably going to be the biggest name in free agency, and see what you can add to that position. But that's why this organization is at very much an inflection point when you have the two biggest decisions in the National Football League, which are your head coach and your quarterback, are kind of out there in flux over the next, as Jimmy Haslam had said, 120 days. We're in day 3 of that. That's where we're going to find out the direction of this franchise.
Well, that's in 2022 at this time of the year in a season. And I asked Andrew Berry, and Baker was still here, are you willing to turn over every stone and explore every possibility? Little did I know Deshaun Watson or whatever was,
sure,
in the thinking. And he said, yeah, we will, even if it would offend somebody. And I was meaning Baker, and we know what happened, didn't work out, but it's kind of the same thing. Are you willing to explore? Most people wouldn't have put Sam Darnold as worth going after, or Daniel Jones at this time last year. And that's what's so hard, is a Mac Jones ready to blossom somewhere else, or, pick out the name like Malik Willis and so forth. So those are the big decisions. But the one thing that I say, well, I'll just ask you this. As far as you look at the schedule last year or this year, coming year, there's only 3 playoff teams, or 3 teams that even had winning records right now. I know that's this year. And I think 4 or 5 of them or 6 of them are looking for head coaches. So they're going to be, I really think in the NFL, you can go from the bottom to the top. 5 playoff teams in my, Andrew said it the other day, but when I looked, 5 of the top 11 picks in the last year's draft made the playoffs.
Yep. Yeah, the NFL is right. That's what it's built for, to have that parity and then have the ability to turn around quickly. Yes, as tough as the Browns schedule was this year, especially in that opening 6 games, next year is a very gettable schedule. And so they're going to have to capitalize on that. I think you're absolutely right. You can turn it around. When you're talking about those quarterbacks that are, like a Malik Willis, or you mentioned Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, a lot of those guys, Daniel Jones spent time in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell and called that kind of quarterback finishing school. Before Sam Darnold went to Minnesota, where was he? With Kyle in San Francisco. Mac Jones now has had that in his time with Kyle Shanahan. Malik Willis has been with Matt LaFleur, who people are saying that he might become available if Green Bay has an early exit, which I think would be a great hire for any organization. But those guys in that kind of a system or scheme, Baker spent time with Sean McVay, and then look how it went. So I like the guys that have spent time in what I would call kind of that quarterback finishing school with people from that tree, that offensive mindset. So I think that's a very viable option and a way to kind of look at this thing and say, oh, all right, those are some of the names that have been in that. They've gotten that education. They've improved clearly on the field when given opportunities, and then to look at it. But I think it is a no stone unturned. I think that if, the new head coach comes in and says, I am a big Shador guy. I liked him coming out. I like some of the progress that I saw from him. Let's go with it. I think they would certainly be open to it. Because as I said, the talent is there. Everybody who evaluated him thought he was a first or a second round pick. He went to the 5th round for reasons not based on his tape. And then you saw some of those good glimpses. But I think if the coach comes in and says, I really want to try A, B, C, or D, I think that's what they're going to go for and try as well. So I think it's going to be kind of working in tandem. But the goal to get it right, and the goal to find that guy that can get this team to the playoffs.
I think the defense stands for itself. Obviously, You can't take anything for granted. You have to, tweak it here and there, build up depth and so forth because of injuries. But I'm going to ask you, as far as as we finish up here, as far as what you see on the offense, bright spots, or gives you hope that they can turn this offense around next year to be palatable, to score more than 16 points a game. Because if they could score 20 or more, you probably would have won 4 or 5, 6 more games just this year.
Yeah,
and what's your biggest concerns?
Yeah, so on the offensive side, things that I like, I like what we saw from Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. I think they're going to be a nice running back tandem going forward. I think Sampson will continue to get better. I think he'll get a little bigger this offseason, but good in the pass game. And then Judkins can certainly do it all. We've got, to do a better job getting him to the line of scrimmage without contact. That was a major problem this year. Harold Fannin, I think his trajectory is to be a consistent Pro Bowl tight end, and a guy who is, as a tight end, can lead your team in receiving, like a Trey McBride out in Arizona. The wide receiver room, I think there are nice pieces. I still am a believer in Jerry Jeudy. I love Isaiah Bond's speed. I like the things Malachi Corley can do. I like Cedric Tillman's body size. He's got to stay healthy. But I think you need to add a dude in that room. I think you need another guy that's maybe a true number one. And then all of a sudden, you go in 11 personnel. You got Fannin out there. You can move him anywhere, play him out wide. You play him in the slot, try to create a mismatch. You'd have Jerry Jeudy. You'd have this stud wide receiver. And then I love the versatility of having, Bond in there and the speed and space that he creates with his vertical game. I like what Malachi Corley does, what I'd call the more horizontal game in those jet sweeps. And so I think it allows you to be a little bit more multiple, but I think we need one more big receiver. And then the concern, and something that's going to be a big focus, is obviously, the offensive line. You're going to have to completely redo that offensive line really in one offseason, which is a major undertaking. But you're going to have to put a lot of resources in that, I think, not only in the draft, but also in free agency. How quickly can you get this group that's going to be, I think, a younger group than we've had in a long time, to be cohesive and to protect this young quarterback or the new quarterback that comes in and give them time to throw, give Quinshon Judkins running lanes. So that's probably the biggest challenge. But I think this is all about the offensive line and getting wide receivers and getting weapons for this team.
That's kind of how it sounds pretty easy. You can point to the Bears. It is
not. Yeah.
The Bears kind of overhauled their offensive line, and Caleb Williams, emerges, and the Browns might not have the quarterback or for sure, but no matter who the quarterback is, you got to build the weapons around them. And that's where a Thuney, they go get him. If you can use some of your assets and get a pillar. But yeah, I agree with you. As the offensive line, I think you and I could look pretty good if we had time to just stand there. I don't propose. I'm not a proponent or understand.
As far as on the Bears too, is that they've got that offensive line, but then you look at their skill. It's DeAndre Swift in the backfield. It's Rome Odunze, first-round pick. DJ Moore, first-round pick, multiple thousand-yard seasons. Luther Burden, their second-round pick, who really got going at the end of the year. And then their first-round pick this year, tight end Colston Loveland. So they've got, all of their skills first or second-round picks. Even Cole Kmet, their second tight end's a second-round pick. So they had that group of weapons. Now they bring in the line, and they've got a first overall pick quarterback. And then, boom, you can see how that takes off. But you're exactly right. We don't have that first overall quarterback right now. We don't have that offensive line yet. And we've got right now, I would say, Fannin and Judkins and Jeudy that are on, getting into that weapon range for them.
And that's the thing. It's hard for me to evaluate offensive linemen. I think you look on paper and you're thinking these Pro Bowlers, you got at least 3 of them up, and you're like, well, I don't know. Is it just they got older? But any way you do it, they all have expiring contracts. You got to get that right. And you got to protect, your quarterback, whoever it is. I think it make a big difference. And like you said earlier, you got to be able to let Quinshon Judkins get past the line of scrimmage before he gets hit. He was getting hit over and over in the backfield, still would get a little bit of yardage. But yeah, I do think that it's a big offseason. I wrote about the 120 days that they were talking about. It sounds easier than it is. But with that schedule and so forth, you just feel like there's optimism. And I'll kind of get you out on that, as far as, talking to the Browns fans. I mean, they're not watching this if they're not pretty dyed-in-the-wool Browns fans. And
no doubt.
And just
like
give us your wrap-up comments.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it should be an exciting time. Find out who the next head coach of the Browns is going to be, what this strategy is going to be going into free agency. I don't think that they're going to be super big spenders, but I do think that they will be active in addressing those things that I think everybody knows are the needs. Wide receiver, offensive line, those are massive. And then what's the quarterback plan going to be? So I do think it's an exciting time. Yes, it's certainly a division that is in more flux than it's ever been. John Harbaugh's out with the Ravens. What do the Steelers look like next year? Is Tomlin, if they get a first-round exit, is Tomlin still the head coach next year? Is Aaron Rodgers their quarterback next year, or are they starting their own quarterback search again? Cincinnati's probably the one team that has the most continuity, but they've got questions galore on the defensive side, despite investing tremendous draft capital on that side of the football. Burrow hasn't been able to stay healthy recently, but if he does, obviously they are a team that's been to the Super Bowl most recently in our division. So Yeah, I do think it's an optimistic time. There's a lot of hope. Change brings that, and there's a lot of opportunity to really, make meaningful change in critical spots. Head coach, quarterback, or buttress what Shedeur Sanders has done at the quarterback position and get him some weapons and be a fun offense and score some points and hopefully go and win a lot of games. It's been a pleasure to be on with you, and I'm just sending a lot of love to you and your family today, Fred, and certainly we'll be thinking about you long after we get off the air here.
Appreciate it, Nathan. Thank you for coming on this, and hope to talk again and see after we get some moves and so forth, see what's going on.
Anytime.
So again, thank you.
How about Nathan Zagura, our good buddy, coming on with us? Lots of good stuff from Nathan, talking about the Cleveland Browns and going into this offseason. Great job there, Fred, with that interview. Sorry I couldn't jump on with you earlier, but just some final thoughts from you here.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing in looking at the schedule, if you look at the records of the opponents next year, I know it's you look at the Browns record and everybody's like, that's a win. But boy, there's a lot of 3-win teams. There's only teams from this year there's only 3 teams that had winning records. And one of those is the Steelers, and I don't think they scare anybody. So you look at 5 teams that were in this position last year that made the playoffs the next year. A big thing is the key was they had quarterbacks that played consistent. So whether it's Sanders that can be in his second year, I don't know if he'll be like the Caleb Williams or Drake May in their second year, but he could be. And you got to build around somebody, even if it's no matter who the quarterback is. So that's where it comes in, getting the head coach right and making some key moves to get weapons on the offensive side. That's for sure. And I think you can really be competitive because, as he said, the AFC North, which was so good, is very fragile. I've used that all year. But boy, Browns, any other position would have had a real shot to go the playoffs because Lamar Jackson got hurt, Joe Burrow got hurt, the Steelers, won the division, and I don't think anybody really thinks they're the best team, in the playoffs. So anything can happen. So that gives you optimism going in the offseason. You put another offseason together like you did last year in the draft, add some free agents, can really make an impact, and who knows?
Well, and again, such a focus on the quarterback as there should be. And with those last 2 wins, I saw it a lot in the comments. The Browns kind of played their way out of the sweepstakes for certainly Mendoza, who's going to go 1 overall to Vegas. But Dante Moore there probably will be right there, right behind him. Browns are out of that sweepstakes, and who even knows? Not that I'm a big Ty Simpson fan, but he announced that he was coming out, and there's a shot. Even though you may think this is over, an overvaluation, but there's a shot he goes in that top 5 as well. So the Browns, may have played themselves out of it, but it doesn't mean that they can't fix this offense. And if you go into next year thinking, hey, let's see what we really have with Shedeur Sanders after a full offseason, a new coaching staff, I think an area that not a lot of people are not enough. I think everybody's talking about how they can improve the passing game, but man, oh man, can you make this kid's life a little bit easier if that's how you go in? By fixing that offensive line, getting Quinshon Judkins some monsters to block in front of him, getting a creative running game, and turning yourself into kind of what you saw with the Browns when Nick Chubb was getting going in his career, which was they were trying to make life easier on Baker Mayfield by getting Nick Chubb out there and letting him run the ball. If they can do that, you make Shedeur Sanders' life a whole lot easier. They weren't able to do it. Not that Quinshon Judkins didn't have a good year, but he kind of had a good year in spite of everything around him. If they can accentuate Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, and for crying out loud, I'd bring Rocket Sanders back. If they can accentuate those guys with some offensive line monsters, makes life easier for everybody. So I'm with you, Fred. We've talked about this a whole bunch of times. Those first 4 picks that they have, I think it's 2 in the first, 1 in the second, 1 in the third. Just give me 2 offensive linemen and 2 wide receivers out of that group. Just 2 linemen, 2 receivers. Grab a lineman in free agency. They are going to have money in free agency. It's the reason Andrew Berry still has a job is he is a wizard with the cap. He will find money in free agency and go out there and and improve this offense. And I think you're exactly right, Fred. We have no idea.
Yeah.
We have no idea. Go ahead.
It'll be fun to watch this offseason, see it unfold. I'll write about and we'll talk about what they should do, and they won't always do what we think they should do, but it's fun to project because, like I said, right now there's optimism. There always is. Maybe you are going to hit. Why not the Browns' turn? It's been so long. So, yeah, it will be quite interesting, and we'll be back here next week talk about it. And got Mary Kay Cabot, who's dialed in with what's going on in the off season, and we'll have some other, great guests. I mean, Nathan's in the building; he's dialed in as anybody. So, I think it'll be great to see how it unfolds. So, it's been a great evening talking Browns. A little kind of diversion. A little bit had immediate death in my family this morning, and just able to talk here with the fans and you people, make it fun, allow me to talk about something other than what's going on in real life right now.
Yeah, Fred, and obviously our thoughts, and I do want to throw this out there in the comments because yes, the interview with Nathan was pre-recorded, but this isn't Chef Brian K. So I want to call you out on that. This is not pre-recorded. We're back live. Fred,
801.
Getting to do this show with you all season and working with you, obviously, at the OBR since we came on, 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. Yeah, just thoughts have been with you all day with your loss and your family. And I wasn't going to bring it up. I was going to let you do it. So certainly you can see it in the comments here. People sending your prayers, positive thoughts, and a lot of love. And a lot of people have a lot of love for you. So
thank you.
Our thoughts are for sure with you, Fred. So that's going to do it for us here for Inside the Browns Beat. We're going to get out of here. Again, you heard Fred say it. Next week, Mary Kay Cabot, she's going to have a lot. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about next week, and she's a good person to have on to do it. So make sure you join us next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, head on over, get a little rest, grab a snack, grab a beer, come back and hang out with us. 9 o'clock, Garage Beers. Spencer German's joining us. We're going to talk all things Browns again. Plus, we're going to talk about college football playoffs, the Buckeyes, the Cavs, the Blue Jackets, everything. We've got 2 weeks to catch up on there too as well. So make sure you tune in at 9 o'clock. That's going to do it. For Inside the Browns Beat, go to theobr.com, get subscribed. Make sure you follow and subscribe everywhere. And for Fred Greetham, I am Michael Keefe. We'll see you next week. Until then, as always, go Browns.
Thank you, everybody.